Welcome, beautiful, to another episode of the Sacred Roots podcast. Today we are going to talk about no one else but the great, the only Mary Magdalene. So much has been written about her as she's been very misunderstood, and the whole mystery around who was Mary Magdalene, what was her role really in the whole Christian Yeshua drama this is all coming to the surface because the mystery around her reflects the mystery around the feminine in general. Mary Magdalene was really the embodiment of the divine feminine, of the Sophia Christ light. And because these frequencies are returning to earth right now, she is returning, and we are starting to remember who she really was and reclaim who she really was. So I don't pretend to hold the truth. I do think I have uncovered a few things, but of course, as everything with these spiritual teachings, take what resonates. Because today I want to share a little bit more about who I believe she was, what her core teachings were. And if that resonates with you and, brings a light on your path, amazing. If it's not resonating, just leave it there. You don't have to take in everything. So to me, Mary Magdalene was the wife of Yeshua, his spiritual partner, but also his beloved. And when we look at the apocryphal Gospels, and the Gospel of Philip particularly, and the Gnostic text of the Pistis Sophia, we really see that Mary Magdalene is presented as his wife, and that Yeshua kissed her often on the mouth. And some of the disciples even asked Yeshua, why do you love her more than you love us? And Yeshua responded, because when two beings are in the dark, if they are both blind, it doesn't really make a difference because there is nothing to see. But when there is light, one of them will be able to see while the others will remain blind. And so this is a metaphor that Yeshua is using to refer Magdalene as the one that can see what others can't. And in Pistis Sophia, he really praises her as the woman who understands the all and is the embodiment of the divine feminine. And so this really offers a whole other perspective on who she was than what the Bible and what the church has led us to believe all these centuries. Because in the Bible, it's not particularly said that she was a prostitute or a whore. It is suggested that she was sinful and she had 7 demons casted out of her by Yeshua, but that is a reference to the 7 chakras. And some people believe that they gave that teaching about the 7 demons, the 7 chakras, together. Because Mary Magdalene and Yeshua were teaching together a lot. They both had trained in different mystery schools and had reached the level of high priest and high priestess, which expanded their auric field and their chakra system into 12-pointed energy field, 12 chakra system that was incredibly bright. Both of them had achieved that level. So you can imagine that when they came together, it created a vortex of energy that was rippling out really far away and really impacting the lives of all those who came close to us. And so people would come in queue to receive his teachings and healings, but also hers. They really came together to teach about equality. Patriarchy was already very present at the time. Women didn't have much to say, but they were both brought up with Essene teachings. And the Essenes believed about the equality about men and women. And the Essenes were a Jewish sect, you could say, that really had different beliefs than the Jewish religion. And they were actually living quite disconnected from the Jewish society, and a lot of their teachings find their roots in ancient Egypt. And so Mary Magdalene and Jesus both studied in the Essene community, were brought up by the Essenes, studied in ancient Egypt, in India, in lots of different places, and then came together to teach about love, to teach about equality, to teach about peace. Their intention was not to create a religion. That's what it became, and we're going to see in a second why. But their intention was to spread this message of love. And so Mary Magdalene was really a spiritual teacher in and of itself. And when they started their ministry, there was a Gnostic movement that was already present and that predates what we know as Christianity right now. And this Gnostic movement really finds its roots in a blend of different philosophies, like the Jewish mystics and mystery school from Judaism, the Zoroastrian Magis, the Hermetic sages, the Egyptian priests. A lot of these ideas came together and became Gnosticism, and that became a clear movement in the 1st and 2nd century after Christ. And that movement, Gnosticism, really arose as a response to the climate at the time, where there was a lot of Roman oppression and control, but also a lot of dogma and rigidity within Judaism, and rituals that were empty, that people were just doing like robots without really thinking what they meant or realizing what they meant. And there was also control of the religious institutions that pretended to be the middleman, the one that had access to the divine and that we had to go see to have access to the divine. So they were suppressing the idea of individual experience, individual connection to the divine. And this is exactly what Gnosticism is about, because it teaches about gnosis, the direct knowledge of the divine, of God. And it's very interesting because it echoes what we are speaking about a lot in today's modern, you can call it New Age spirituality. It's New Age, but actually very ancient, because the ancient Egyptians were teaching about this as well. And so the core teachings of the Gnostics is that there's gnosis. We can have a direct knowledge, direct experience of the divine, and that salvation, I mean, this is a whole class to just speak about salvation in and of itself, but salvation basically means enlightenment, having an enlightened consciousness, being more of the light than led by our shadows. And that salvation comes not just from faith and from just reading the sacred text and blindly believing. Gnostics say that salvation comes from inner knowing and spiritual awakening. What does that mean? It comes from remembering that you are a spiritual being having a human experience and allowing that spiritual self guide you towards inner knowing. Inner knowing is another word for intuition. Letting your soul guide you. You know, sometimes you just know things, you just feel things, and you let that guide you. That's what leads you to salvation, enlightenment. That's what the Gnostics believed, and that's very much what we believe as well today as a modern spiritual community. The Gnostics also taught about the divine spark, that we each, as humans, carry a fragment of the divine within. They called it the spark of Sophia, that is trapped in the material world and seeking to return to the light. There's also this teaching about Sophia, about the divine feminine. There's a deep understanding that there is such a thing as the divine feminine, and that the world will heal through the return of the divine feminine. And the Gnostics also taught that the goal of life on earth was to awaken, to transcend the illusion, the Maya, like they would say in Sanskrit, and to return to divine union while we are still alive. It's this concept of inner resurrection that actually Christ tried to teach on a material level, and that also echoes the teachings of Isis and Osiris who resurrected. It's all a story of our own resurrection, of our own soul awakening and liberation. And then something else that is interesting about the Gnostics is that some of them believed in the concept of dualism, while others didn't. Not all the Gnostics agreed on their core teachings. It was a very broad movement. And so some Gnostics believed that there was a main God that had created heaven, and there was a lesser God, a demiurge, that was a lesser divine being that had created the earth. And so as a result, the earth was a lesser creation, was less spiritual, less divine, actually even degenerate. And so Mary Magdalene and Jesus didn't believe that and didn't teach that at all. But Peter and Paul, who were the apostles who led the outer church, Peter, who was also often called Simon, Simon Peter. They are the same. I mean, there's different Simons in the Bible, but Simon Peter is one and the same. And so Peter here is the one that led and created the church. He was very charismatic, and he received that mission from Yeshua, was to share these main teachings that most people would understand, because 2,000 years ago, people were not as awakened as we all are today, especially you, if you're listening to this podcast and you've been tuning in to all the teachings that I've shared here on the Sacred Roots podcast. People didn't have that level of awakening at the time. They were just waiting for the Savior, someone to come from the outside and do the work for them. And so there was a bit of conflict here between Mary Magdalene and John and Peter and Paul, because John especially was always between the more progressive Gnostics and Peter and Paul, who were the Christian Gnostics, and was trying to keep peace between the two, but was also telling Peter, be really careful with this teaching, because what you're doing is telling people that the body is not sacred. So people are going to disconnect from their body, eventually hurt their bodies, not treat their bodies as a temple. And we actually access God through our bodies, through our inner knowing, we need the body. So this is interesting, because this belief did lead to certain sects who started to hurt the flesh, right? We all know, we have read or seen the Da Vinci Code, who talks about the Opus Dei, and they hurt the flesh because they saw the body as less sacred. This is also why some people feel shame around their sexuality, around their sensuality. It's seen as less sacred. It's seen as dirty. So it comes from this dualistic concept. But the progressive Gnostics that Mary Magdalene was really the leader of didn't teach that at all. They were more teaching about oneness, about as above, so below, which is again a Hermetic teaching. Like the upper world and the underworld are the same. They are sacred, and the body and the mind are both sacred. And when we can create oneness within ourselves and walk the way, this is when we reach enlightenment. And that was one of the main teachings of Mary Magdalene, who was really the leader of the Christian mystery school. It was decided before Jesus' crucifixion that Peter would lead the outer church and Mary Magdalene would lead the inner church, the deeper teachings, the deeper mystery school. In the same way that in Judaism, you have the outer Judaism and then the mysticism, the Kabbalah, which are the deeper teachings. And Peter didn't like that Mary Magdalene was leading that inner church, because he knew that she understood some teachings that he couldn't. So there was a bit of a tension there. And, the feminine at the time was already very much persecuted. And I believe this is why the Gospels that were chosen for the Bible in the Council of Nicaea in, I believe, 350, 360 after Christ, I don't remember the date exactly, they chose certain Gospels where women were very much pushed down. And then the other Gospels, they decided they weren't valid. They removed the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. It was already written. They had knowledge of it, access of it. They removed it and decided not to put it into the Bible. I mean, this is a whole conversation for another day, but it's interesting to know about all of this because it helps us understand that a lot of the beliefs that we have today, or a lot of the ways that we relate to our bodies or to the divine, actually find their roots in very, very ancient events, beliefs, leaders, and conflicts. And so Mary Magdalene was really seen as the leader of the Gnostic, progressive Gnostics, the Christian inner mystery school. And she decided that to spread these teachings and to help all the Gnostics, she set up that organization in 3 levels. There were going to be weekly gatherings whenever they arose and people wanted to come together. There were going to be quarterly meetings in central location of each country so that emerging Gnostics could meet and learn from each other. And then for all those who wanted to go deeper, there was going to be an annual meeting on the island of Cyprus in the estate of Joseph of Arimathea, which was her adopted father. very wealthy men who gave her a lot of money. And this is why she funded Jesus's ministry. She funded the 12 apostles during the whole time, all the money that they had, all the things that they were able to do, all the travels. She funded it thanks to the money of her father, who was one of the wealthiest men at the time because he was a tradesman. Also a very spiritual man that belonged to the Essene community. But he was very, very wealthy. And he used all his ships that he had in his trading company. He used those ships to help Mary Magdalene, Yeshua, Mother Mary, and all of that move around the Mediterranean. And especially after the crucifixion, leave for France and Britain. And so on July 22nd, I'm going to be holding a Mary Magdalene feast day because that's the day where we honor her. And I'm going to go much deeper into what is that teaching of the way that she carried through? What is that teaching of enlightenment? It's a living teaching that helps us really, it's very, very modern. You are going to recognize a lot of the things that we do today. But so I'm going to teach that on July 22nd and take you through a powerful process where we can apply that into our lives. So if that's resonating with you and you want to go deeper into that, I'd recommend you check the link in the show notes of this episode so you can save your seat. It's totally free. Everybody is welcome. I believe these teachings need to come out. So come and join us to learn more about Mary Magdalene, the Magdalene wounds, the Magdalene frequency, because Magdalene is a title. It was not her name. And I'll teach more about that in that transmission. It's not really a workshop. It's more of a transmission, a sacred circle. And then we'll experience the way together. And the final thing I want to share with you is that the reason why all these teachings are surfacing right now, it's because they are actually very, very modern. And they really apply to the age that we are in right now, because we are stepping into the age of sovereignty, of inner authority. Humanity is really shifting from giving our power to external people, religious authority. We are taking that power back to ourselves and to our relationship with the divine. You know, all of us doing meditations and prayers, it's because we know we have that access within us. We have experienced it, right? I hope you have experienced it. If not, keep going. You will at some point. And that mirrors the Gnostics' belief and teachings of inner knowing. The Gnostics also deeply believed in the feminine, the divine Sophia. And this is exactly what we are experiencing. The feminine is rising, and the healing of humanity will happen through the rising of the feminine. The rising of Mary Magdalene, of Mother Mary, of Isis, which were teachers of love. And how do you heal? Through the power of love. This is exactly the myth of Isis and Osiris. More on that another day. We are also stepping into the age of Aquarius and spiritual individualism. Astrologically, we have now moved into that age, which is an age of truth-seeking, spiritual sovereignty, unity consciousness, this energy of community rather than oneness. And that is very aligned with the Gnostic teachings. So they are very relevant today because they teach us that you do not need a mediator to know God. The divine is within you. And that darkness is not to be feared. It is where the light is born. That's deeply, deeply feminine, because darkness in its essence is feminine. When you think about it, every man is born from a dark womb. Every rose rises from the dark soil of the earth. Every day begins at midnight, when it is the night, when it is the darkness. And so the Gnostics understood that there was nothing to fear about darkness. It's where the light is born. So this is deeply relevant for the times that we are in. Because today, the world looks dark. And the media likes to portray it as such. But the light is being born. And this darkness is necessary for the light to be born. It's Rumi that said, it's through the cracks of the heart that the light can come through. So while it might feel that it's completely chaotic and terrible, and it is, I'm not diminishing that. I'm just giving you the spiritual teaching that from the darkness, the light is born. So hold on to this knowing that a light is born. Be the light. Go back to episode 121, where I teach about how you can express more of your light into the world, because we are all here to anchor that frequency, your unique frequency, your unique soul's mission and purpose and essence. Yes. And the more you can bring that into the world, the more you're bringing the light. So we are all here as anchors, as pillars to bring through a world that has that unity consciousness, that lives in truth, that lives in spiritual sovereignty. So it's actually a very exciting time once you understand these deeper teachings. Beautiful. I look forward to seeing you on July 22nd. If you want to dive more into all of this, I'm sending you all my love, so many blessings, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.